Sequels can be bizarre, and no genre really has as much of an issue with the bizarreness than the horror genre. Horror has a fantastic slew of weird-ass sequels that defy any kind of logic within their own franchise. I mean, Space Jason is a thing!
You guys might want to run.
Horror is a great lens to look through because of how many subgenres and themes and types of story that genre explores. I'm sure at some point in the future I'll revisit horror to talk about things like music in cinema, or special effects, or even why comedy does and doesn't work. For now though, we're talking sequels, not threequels, or prequels, or squeakquels, or decaquels? That's the 10th film in a series, so no Jason X. But we're just focusing on direct sequels. You know, as easy as it would be to mention Jason X, or Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, or Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors, or Puppet Master 12 The Littlest Reich, that franchise has too many films in it. I feel like as you progress with any franchise, you're gonna get some heavily varied movies. I'm also leaving out planned trilogies and two-part stories from this list, so Silence of the Lambs won't make an appearance, and by Silence of the Lambs I of course mean the Red Dragon Hannibal franchise, and you won't be seeing the adult half of the It films here either. But how do we make a good sequel? I think to start to answer this question, you need to take the remaining sequels, once you've removed those other ones, and try and categorize them. I'll delve into each category in more depth, but for starters, here's what I've come up with. So number one is of course the planned sequel. There isn't much to say about these. They're typically based on previously written stories, or are continuations of stories that were written during the making of the first film. Number two is the continuation. These are different from the planned sequel because, like most sequels, they come about after the original success. These movies share characters and timelines, and quite often the same production crew, whether it be the writer or the director or the whole team. So think Halloween and Halloween 2, or Halloween and Halloween 2, or Halloween and Halloween, but not Halloween and Halloween, or Halloween and Halloween, because one is a remake and the other is a continuation of the film that was remade but excludes the remake. Also, fun fact, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends are now in production, which are sequels to the sequel of a film with the same name as the first film that retcons a sequel. I want to fucking die!
You don't know what death is.
Number three is the indirect. These are films that can be within the same universe and timeline, but aren't immediate continuations and don't have the same characters. A clear example of this is the Cloverfield films, Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's incredibly obvious that the title Cloverfield in 10 Cloverfield Lane is just a way to get more money to an unknown IP, but it's technically in the same universe as the original and really has jack all to do with it. It is an incredible film though, and much better than the first. Number 4, The Shark Jumper. Now these sequels are without a doubt my favourite because of how amazingly shite they are. For those who don't know, jumping the shark is a term used in movies and TV where a plot goes completely wild and the quality and style has changed to a point that it is just no longer recognisable as related to the original. These films are often, not always, but often, made by misguided production companies. The three films I'll be talking about for this category are genius for very different reasons. I'll keep them a surprise for now, but just know that one is a disaster made by the production company, the second is a disaster made by the original creator, and the third is the original creator making his film a disaster on purpose to spite the production company and the audience.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
The bond that these three share is that whoever decided to make the sequel looked at the script from the original, thought about the place that the first one came from, the reasons for its existence, and at some point just said, fuck that noise, and threw it in the trash. Or reused the script in heinous ways, but we'll come to that. So once you've got an idea of where your story fits into the original, whether it's a shared universe, or a continuation, or you kind of just want to do something wild and jump the shark, you can start to look at the pitfalls and the plus points of each category and flesh out your story from there. And also avoid the pitfalls. So, just a quick warning, spoilers for many, many 80s and 90s horror films from here on in, and also 10 Cloverfield Lane. Halloween 2 is the prime example of a continuation, and honestly, spoilers for this nearly 40-year-old film. It's 1978, and Michael Myers has just been shot 7 times by ironically named professional grumpy boy, Donald Pleasance. The camera pans over the balcony, only to show Michael's body isn't there. Hold on Donald's face. Music swells. Your cliffhanger ending has just secured nightmares for your audience. At least, that's how it was until 1981. Talks of making more money from this IP had continued since the incredible success of the first film, and both original writers, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, began writing the script for a sequel. Unfortunately, John Carpenter wasn't enamoured with the idea of being more involved in the production, despite co-writing the script, and so he handed off directorial responsibility to Rick Rosenthal. The film picks up at the cliffhanger of the first film, and, after the iconic title screen, continues from only a couple minutes later, with Dr. Loomis ranting in the distance about shooting Michael Myers.
I shot him 6 times! I shot him in the heart!
Can't have gotten very far. Come on.
I shot him 6 times!
6 times!
Couldn't have shot him 6 times.
Michael Myers has just been shot 7 times.
6 times!
You got it fucking wrong, Donald. Learn how to count, Donald. Learn how to count. Mike starts up his reign of terror immediately by stealing a new kitchen knife and killing another teenage girl. At the same time that this is going on, Laurie Strode, our Scream Queen from the original, is being taken to the local hospital. Also, some kid is dressed like Michael Myers, and he gets fucking blown up by a cop, and no one seems to give a shit? Despite that, the movie is wonderful and plays out the rest of the night and the following morning of the first movie. Realistically, this film should be called Halloween and a bit of November 1st, but that's why I don't make titles for movies. This continuation is one of the more obvious, considering it takes place mere moments after the ending of the original. Continuation films don't need to be that obvious, and often continue the story from the first film in a more thematic way. That being said, they do need some human story links to the original film, otherwise it becomes more of an indirect. A fine example of this is Friday the 13th Part 2. 5 years after the reign of terror of an old woman who had the culinary genius to shish kebab bacon, Jason, actual Jason this time, returns to hunt camp counselors once again. Adrienne King also reprises her role as Alice. At least for the first 5 minutes she does. Set 2 months after the ending of the first film, Alice is unceremoniously ice-picked to the fucking temple and killed off. That is when we skip 5 years ahead and begin a new story. And thus we have an issue with so many continuing sequels. The connection to the first film, in this case the hero, is often disposed of relatively quickly because their story had already reached a conclusion in the first film. Unless you explore an interesting route for the character, like them dealing with the aftermath of the first film, or the psychological impact of their trials from the first film, then any continuation with them feels like either a betrayal of their character, or is just a non-story. It is easy, however, to continue the story of the villain in horror movies, but unless you're continuing an actual character arc, which is hard for Friday Part 2, considering Pam got fucking Shrek'd, you're just bringing back a recognisable ghoulie, and they could kind of be replaced with any old threat. I do give Friday Part 2 a pass here, as the villain in this film is the actual real 100% prime beef Jason, not just his mum again, and he does continue the story of the Voorhees' family and their retribution on camp counsellors. Which leads me really nicely into my third category, the indirect. I said earlier that 10 Cloverfield Lane is a good example of this, and it really is. The first Cloverfield film is a found footage style movie about a man with severe balance issues as he takes his camera on a walking tour of exotic fauna in New York City. The primary adversary in this movie is this big fuck-off alien as it terrorizes Manhattan and unleashes its alien STDs into the streets. The main characters, thankfully, die, and their stories come to an end. A one-off movie with lifeless characters who won't be revisited. Or so I thought. There was once a film called The Cellar. It was a super low-budget script about a woman being trapped in someone's basement. The spec script was kicked around Hollywood for a bit, until it came to Bad Robot, which is J.J. Abrams' company. They renamed the film Valencia, and got some writers on board to flesh out and rewrite the project. What was created was this gorgeous psychological drama about a paranoid survivalist played by John Goodman who kidnaps some young people and keeps them in a fallout shelter due to a cataclysmic event going on outside. This deep, complex game of what is the real threat is played out with the audience, convincing us one moment that there really is a danger outside, and the next reassuring us that it's absolutely fine out there, and Fred Flintstone is the real threat. In walks J.J. Abrams, swinging his big, floppy lightsaber, who says, "You know what? This reminds me of another film I did. Let's stick on the Cloverfield IP." JJ had realised that if the external threat to the bunker was a delusion of aliens, why not just make them actual aliens? From that point on, there's no reason he can't just say, oh, well, they all came from the same extraterrestrial event as the first movie. The film was never really a sequel, and still isn't really a sequel, but it does take place in the same universe. Technically. And now we come to my absolute favourite category of sequels, the Shark Jumpers. These films are typically a trash fire of a script combined with an absolute nightmare of a production. And speaking of nightmares, we actually start with Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This film is, by far, my favourite piece of queer cinema ever. I just want to point out that in my notes, I give myself some little cues as to what clips I'm going to add in, just to help me in the edit. I've put as a note here, insert literally any clip of the movie. This is how gay this film is, and it's incredible.
He comes to me at night, horrible, ugly, dirty, under the sheets with me, tearing at my nightgown with his steel claws.
Throwback to 1984, and New Line Cinema gets its first taste of financial success with the smash hit Nightmare on Elm Street, a film created by Wes Craven about a magical paedophile who murders children in their dreams. Robert Shea, the founder of New Line Cinema, made the first film with great financial stress on himself, and while the film made money, due to selling off various rights to get the film made, he, nor New Line, really saw any of that money. But what New Line did have was the sequel rights. Things were really quite rocky between Bob Shea and Wes Craven. and Bob knew that Wes didn't really want the movie turned into a franchise. And so, without even consulting Wes, New Line stormed ahead in the production of a sequel. A new writer, well, an employee of the 16mm distribution department of New Line, David Chaskin, was brought on to write the new script, and a new director, Jack Shoulder, was brought on to direct the film. So Jack was a proficient enough director. He had one movie under his belt with Alone in the Dark, so he knew what he was doing, and, you wouldn't agree to direct a movie you didn't like, right? Jack is actually quoted as saying,
I was never a huge fan of the original. I mean, I understood why it was good and I understood why it was successful, but I felt no compunction to follow the template of the first film.
Jack. Mate. So without the blessing of the creator of the franchise, with a writer who had never written, and a director that didn't like the premise of the original film, New Line charged forward, certain they were onto a winner. And who could blame them? This script is a fucking gold mine. Instead of approaching Heather Langenkamp to reprise her role of the heroine, they broke all conventions for horror movies to that point and cast Mark Patton as the world's first male scream queen. This decision alone revealed a torrent of homoerotic subtext. You know what, it's not even subtext. This film is incredibly homoerotic, and it's completely by accident, and I fucking love it. Apparently, no one on production knew how queer this film was while they were making it, but how can you not?
Jesus Christ! You scared the shit out of me, man.
I need you to let me stay here tonight. There's something inside of me. Something is trying to get inside my body.
And you want to sleep with me?
This guy right here is the CEO of New Line Production, Bob Shea, and you're telling me he had no idea of the subtext? Regardless of how amazing all this incredible homoeroticism is, the film had a lot of faults that left audiences dissatisfied. It was remarkably obvious that New Line was trying to cash in with current teen trends. A few years prior, Risky Business was released, featuring a scene with Tom Cruise dancing, and it just played fantastically with audiences. I'm sure you've seen the scene before because it stood the test of time. And so, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 needed a dancing scene. How else are they going to get audiences? But instead, we got this. Scenes like this, along with bizarre scenes involving exploding parakeets that are meant to represent the arrival of Freddy Krueger, are some of the reasons why this film is so widely regarded as trash. But the real contentious point comes at the end of the movie. For those who don't know, Freddy Krueger lives in your dreams. He can't get you while you're awake, but he can when you're asleep, so you just stay awake. You try and stay awake to avoid him, right? And remember how the director also said he didn't like the premise of the original, like that really unique thing? So near the end of the movie, Freddy, the dream killer, becomes real. He bursts his way out at a pool party and is suddenly in the real world.
You are all my children now.
divisive, to say the fucking least. But with incredibly mixed reviews, the film was a box office smash, proving that you can have a production company completely jump the shark and it will still make money. Wow! If only Wes Craven were here to head up the sequel, it never would have jumped the shark, I hear you say.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
Allow me to introduce you to Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. The Hills Have Eyes is a 1977 film written and directed by Wes Craven about inbred cannibals that lived in some hills in the desert. The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 is a 1984 film written and directed by Wes Craven that retells the first film from the perspective of a dog with PTSD. I'm not fucking around here. That's what the actual movie is about. So much of this movie is just footage from the first film reused and then edited in with shots of the dog from the first film as if he's having PTSD flashbacks. Okay, admittedly, more characters than just the dog have flashbacks, but that's really the one that cements how utter tripe this film is. Lord help anyone who tries to watch these films back to back. The story goes that Wes Craven desperately needed money, and so he wrote and shot what is essentially 20 pages of new script on a shoestring budget and slapped it together with shots from the first film for just a quick, easy cash grab. What's really odd is that this film was made in the wake of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, a film with just infinite amounts of imagination and passion. Needless to say, this did not get played in cinemas. It was released straight to home video and pay-per-view. It's kind of hard to tell how much money this movie made because it wasn't released in cinemas, but honestly, I would believe you if you said it was either $50 million or like $5.
Get money!
But Alice, I hear you say, surely Wes Craven is just a beautiful and bizarre man, and if you gave a sequel to any other original creator, they wouldn't, I don't know, purposefully mess it up? Well, my sweet little pumpkin, you are wrong again, because obviously you have not heard the tragedy of Darth Texas Chainsaw Massacre II. Tobe Hooper is another beautiful and bizarre man who co-wrote and directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974. It's a film about a massacre that happens with chainsaws in Texas. The film actually follows a group of teenagers as they head up to an old relative's house to investigate reports of grave robbing. While driving to the house, they pick up a hitchhiker who is totally not a Hoopy Frood. Hashtag Douglas Adams gang. Pretty sure I'm the only member of that. He tells the teens about an old slaughterhouse nearby to the house that they're going to, before slicing himself up and then slicing at one of the teens. Needless to say, the group don't really keep him around much longer, and they make their way, now hitchhikerless, to their destination. After finding a watering hole, the teens decide to take a dip in murder, but like their own murder, like they're being murdered. They start to get murdered. They get picked off, right, in just like various gruesome and amazing ways by a family obsessed with interior design and human decoupage. And also, this lady decides to scream for like 50 minutes straight. That's most of the film. Seriously, her poor throat, scream queen, MVP. Nowadays, it sounds like a pretty standard affair for a slasher, but this film really laid a path for all slashers to replicate, from the very visceral violence, to the jump scares, to the kind of freaky, inhuman villain that seems to be unkillable. The thing is that while everyone loved the film for its sense of dread and genuine horror, both the producers and the audience tend to miss the dark comedy aspects of the film. You know that when I said the main protagonist screams for 50 minutes? Yeah, it's over the top, it's purposeful, it's funny. The hitchhiker who slashes himself, that's kind of over the top and funny. This movie has like a lot of legitimate laughs that people tend to miss. And Tobe Hooper, the director, fucking hated that people missed it. So that when Chainsaw Massacre became a smash hit and a sequel became inevitable, Tobe Hooper saw the opportunity just to troll everyone. As opposed to making another horror, Hooper went balls to the wall with the comedy aspects of the movie. To the point where the poster for this film about a crazed family of killer cannibals spoofs the goddamn Breakfast Club. And Molly Ringwald has never looked so good. A lot of people really hate this film, but I don't really hate anything. I can kind of enjoy watching most movies, but I particularly love how purposefully stupid some of these scenes are. Have you ever wanted to see a chainsaw duel? We've got this! Do you want to see Dennis Hopper shopping for chainsaws in the greatest scene of chainsaw mercantile ever? That's a thing! How about this man at the chainsaw store coming his pants over Dennis Hopper chopping up a tree?
Oh, my kid banana.
I know this video is titled something clickbaity like how to make a good sequel, but it's important to note where all these sequels come from. The reasons behind them, the kind of the framing of the original creative vision, and these categories can really help to define that intention of the film. So how do you make a good sequel? Which category is best? A lot of people would say the indirect. It allows for logical storytelling, new scope, evolving the franchise in new and exciting ways with new characters, new themes, new stories. But honestly, I think I can have more fun with a shark jumper. And, you know, sometimes direct sequels can further one character who I've already come to love in more meaningful ways than an indirect ever could. So anyone out there looking to make a sequel to a book, or a short film, or a feature, or, you know, anything that tells a story, think about your intention. Think about what you've got to say. Think about what you're trying to give your audience with a sequel. Don't let a production company interfere with your creative vision. And whatever you do, don't retell the original from the perspective of a dog with PTSD. I hope you've enjoyed me categorizing movie sequels. If not, why did you get to this point? You know, it's like, what, 20 minutes? Who would do you hate yourself? If you do, it's okay. I love you, regardless. Drop a like. Smash that keyboard with your head. Don't do that. Smash the... I don't know if I smash the subscribe button. It feels like very wet. Like you're punching an avocado. Smash is a great instant mash company. Is Smash outside of... Smash isn't really outside of the UK, is it? And like, kind of working class UK. That the fucking Queen isn't eating Smash. Oh, one suspects that one would like a packet of Smash made with just a little knob of margarine, just to give it an extra creamy kick. Queen ain't doing that, is she? If Smash makes it into the next season of The Crown, that is what I live for. Right, I'm starting the campaign. Smash in season 4 of The Crown.